What's up, guys? Your boy, 20K13. Gonna talk about 11 things WWE wants you to forget about Roddy Piper. And this comes from WhatCulture.com. Roddy Piper had died at the age of 51. TMZ is reporting that he suffered a cardiac arrest and passed in his sleep on Thursday night. The wrestling world is now in mourning with a major outpouring of grief from all corners of the industry. An entire generation of current stars grew up watching the Hot Rod. The likes of The Rock and CM Punk have taken to Twitter and paid tribute to the inspirational star, even beyond wrestling. He had a degree of mainstream fame with several acting roles. UFC Ronda Rousey was a huge fan and will dedicate her fight this weekend to the man who gave her the Rowdy nickname. The death marked yet another passing of that classic boom era in wrestling. He was best known for his colorful promo and Piper Pig segment during the WWF cartoon era prime. He main evented the very first WrestleMania and was one of Hulk Hogan's main antagonists. But before all of that, he was revered as a very stylish ring guy. He worked the NWA and Southern Territory for years, forming a very strong friendship with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. That and several other aspects of his life and career, WWE wants you to forget about. Number 11. His true heritage. You'd be surprised how many casual fans actually believe Roddy Piper is Scottish. The dodgy Scott accent and kilt were enough to fool thousands of kids in the late 80s, and WWE kept the gimmick up ever since. They always billed him from Glasgow, Scotland, and as recently as the last decade was booking him alongside the Highlander tag team, Tardy and Bad Pipe. They had Roddy over as Scottish to the core. But in reality, and smarter fans of course know this, he's from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. He was actually really proud of that Canadian heritage, and he ranked right up there with Canada's finest wrestling export. Even though sections of WWE fan base started to become aware of that as they got older. WWE kept up the premise that Piper was Scottish. The truth was he did have Scottish ancestry, but on the whole, his entire Scott character was just a heel gimmick. Number 10. His pre-WWF days. In Vince McMahon World Pro Wrestling history only revolved around his company and the video collection he owned. But Roddy Piper was so much more than just a WWF novelty act. He wrestled in the AWA from 1973 to 75, before moving on to the various territories of the National Wrestling Alliance between 1975 through 1980. His work in the early 80s includes Georgia Championship Wrestling and Mid-Atlantic. His charisma was flourishing, and it was in this period that the WWF became interested. But if you really want to see Roddy Piper the wrestler, dig out some old Jim Crockett promotion tape, watch the matches Piper had with Ric Flair or Greg Valentine. The guy could go, and he really got to show that to its full extent in the gimmick-laden 80s WWF. The way Vince booked him, it was like they wanted you to forget he was a wrestler. It was like he was a personality more than a worker. Number 9. Racism. Roddy Piper wasn't a racist, but the WWF certainly booked him in angles that in retrospect have racist aspects. For example, the time on Piper Pig when he insulted Jimmy Snuka, Polynesian heritage, and whacked him with a coconut. It is remembered as a classic Piper segment, but it also mildly inappropriate. More explicit than that in his feud with Mr. T. He talked about T's lip being like a castle mitt and told him he'd whip him like a slave. Then there was a time that Piper blacked up, painting half his face black for a feud with Bad News Brown. Looking back now, it isn't exactly what WWE wants fans reminded of. Number 8. Pat Patterson incident. On kayfabe commentary last year, Roddy Piper seemed to suggest something about an incident between himself and WWF legend Pat Patterson, and I quote, "I was young, probably my fault. I was a pretty little kid. It got awkward, that's all," he said. It's a hard business. Patterson is bordering on being a McMahon family member, such is his closeness to Vince. But in the early 90s, he was accused of sexual harassment against some young male employees. He ended up leaving the business for a short while and WWE settled the matter. Whatever happened with Piper and Patterson, the hot rod certainly looked uncomfortable in the above video. Number 7. One of the most ridiculous matches of all time. When it comes to matches the WWE can be proud of, they might think of The Undertaker vs. Michael or Austin vs. Hart. They sure as hell won't think of the ridiculous Hollywood backlot brawl which Roddy Piper engaged in with Goldust at WrestleMania 12. This was WCW in terms of nonsense, with the match spilling over into a car chase. When it then ended up back in the ring, Piper stripped Goldust down and revealed the bizarre one corset. It was weird and ridiculous. Compare this to Piper in-ring classic with Flair and it is embarrassing. No doubt WWE will out some of Piper's best matches this next week, but the awkward backlot brawl will not be one of them. Number 6. Piper and Kevin Nash fight for real. In 1997, Roddy Piper was working for WCW. He had been tagging with Ric Flair against Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, in a match that ended up being a complete mess. Supposedly Nash ended up injuring his knee due to Piper incompetence. Backstage scene kick off. Nash boldly walked up to Piper and slapped or punched him in the face. A mini brawl then ensued before the two were separated. As one of the most powerful wrestlers in the world, Nash went unpunished, even though it was WCW. WWE hates stories like this getting out, because Nash and Piper are both legends with their market. But the animosity was real, and still brewing even last year, with Piper claiming he had got the better of the fight. They caused a little war of words with Nash and X-Pac slamming Piper on Twitter. Number 5. Backstage politics and problems with management. Roddy Piper will probably be the first to admit that he had an ego, both in WWE and WCW. He expected to be booked and treated a certain way. That resulted in the plan of backstage politics, when in turn caused problems with management wherever he went. He had multiple run-ins with Vince, then multiple run-ins with Eric Bischoff. He even ended up suing WCW for age discrimination in 2001, but he was 49 years old at the time. WCW was right to be judging him on age. Wrestling should be a young person's game. To get an idea of Piper's ego, consider that he was booked in the main event of Starrcade in 1996. At the age of 42, he was babyface hero taking down the NWO. He actually defeated Hulk Hogan in the main event, although it wasn't for the world title. You don't end up in that spot by being a nice company guy. Piper was as bad as anyone in that period for keeping himself past his prime. Number 4. WWE 2003 run. WWE wants you to forget Piper's 2003 run because of who it involved. You won't see much footage of it because he came back as an adversary of Hulk Hogan during Mr. McMahon's feud with the Hulkster. He actually came out during Hogan vs. McMahon at WrestleMania 19, getting a great reaction from the huge Seattle crowd. But with Hogan now being hidden from history amid the racism scandal, WWE won't want to mention Piper's role in 2003. You also have the fact that Piper was managing Sean O'Haire in that period. Sadly, O'Haire killed himself at the age of 43 in 2014. It is something WWE don't want to draw attention to. As a result, there's not much of Piper's 2003 run that WWE wants to talk about. Number 3. One of the biggest hellraiser. Roddy Piper was called Roddy for a reason. He was legitimately a hellraiser. Ric Flair once compared him to the Rolling Stones, saying that the rock band partying was nothing compared to Hot Rod. According to Flair, Piper would have took the rocker away and drank until dawn. There's a coolness about that, but then you also have to look at the consequence. Roddy Piper is dead at 61. His alcohol abuse during his prime wasn't like a problem, but undoubtedly that sort of access come back to haunt in later life. He was a huge drinker and a huge party animal. Thankfully for WWE, the internet didn't exist back then. God only knows what would come. God only knows what came out of if Papa and Flair had been living like that in a more scrutinized world. Number 2, Piper TNA run. WWE likes to pretend that TNA doesn't exist and TNA history never happened. So don't expect to hear anything about what Hot Rod did with the rest of his 2003, going to TNA Wrestling and hosting in the pit segment. These recreated which is a nice way of saying rip off Piper's most famous WWE segment, including the one with Jimmy Snuka. It was surreal to see Snuka and Piper there on TNA television. He also worked as a special referee for a match between Scott Hall and Jeff Hardy before disappearing from the company and re-embracing his WWE legacy in 2005. And number 1, fractured relationship. Towards the end of Roddy Piper's life, he expressed frustration with WWE and Stone Cold Steve Austin in particular. Piper believed Austin had forced podcast once to pull an episode of his radio show which had mocked the rattlesnake. Austin denied this. There was also a beef with WWE with Ric Flair suggesting that the company may have ditched Hot Rod from his Legend contract. Apparently, Austin and WWE have taken real objection to Piper's podcast comment, but the real story isn't fully known. A lot of it was Piper saying one thing and Austin saying another thing. It sounded like crosswire and it wasn't clear if Piper really had been released from his Legend contract. Whatever the situation, there was definitely tension. It's a shame that thing ended on that note for Piper, with his death coming just weeks after the fallout. Well, guys, that's it. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys on the next one. Peace.